Hello everyone, welcome to From the Star Wars Home Video Library. I'm your host Nathan P. Butler. Now this is an episode that is a supplemental episode, hence the much better lighting and such here, to an episode released quite a while back in terms of recording time here. This is being released as a supplement looking back at our coverage of Revenge of the Sith. Now, you may recall that one of the things I said in that episode about Revenge of the Sith was how if you wanted to get Revenge of the Sith on home video in the United States back in 2005, you basically had two options. You could get the widescreen DVD, or you could get the full screen DVD. Something was missing for the first time from a major Star Wars release, and that was VHS. Now, in the American market, if you wanted to get The Phantom Menace on VHS, you could actually get that before you could get it on DVD. You could get that in 2000. You could get the regular full screen edition, the special Toys R Us clamshell edition, or the widescreen collector's edition. Lots of options if you were in the US, speaking English, wanting to get a VHS copy of The Phantom Menace. But DVD was growing immensely and VHS was fading. So a couple of years later in 2002, when we saw the first time a Star Wars film had its home video release in the same year it was in theaters, we got Attack of the Clones on VHS, only in full screen. Otherwise, you had to buy it on DVD. There was no widescreen equivalent, and this was the last time a Star Wars film would be released on VHS in the US. What that meant was that if you were a collector of the Star Wars films on VHS, you would never be able to get a US market full set of the prequel trilogy on VHS because it simply didn't exist. There was no US VHS release of Revenge of the Sith. Now, a while back, we had a troll, douchebag, whatever you want to call him, who was trolling this show's pages, the different video pages on YouTube, constantly saying, "It's not complete! You're a liar! You're spouting false information! I've got to pee! I got to poo-poo in my pants!" About how I must be lying because, yes, there was such a thing as Revenge of the Sith on VHS. Yeah, but not here. And repeatedly I was saying it wasn't available here. There were no US VHS releases of Revenge of the Sith, and I acknowledged multiple times that it was available in foreign markets and pointed out in, I think it was a supplemental video, about basically how this show is focused on primarily US releases, and any oddball items like foreign releases or odd formats and such that happen to wind up in my collection. So yeah, if I happen to run across one, I'll show it at some point. But when it comes to highlighting US releases, obviously, if there's no such thing as a US release of Revenge of the Sith on VHS, there wouldn't be an episode on some kind of imaginary release. And no, that's not lying. That's just reality. After the trolling calmed down and such, I never really took the time to really go searching for a non-US copy of Revenge of the Sith on VHS. I knew they were out there, but it hadn't really been something on my radar as I was trying to collect other things. And it turns out that this show actually has a very strong, dedicated fan base. And one of those fans happened to realize that, hey, this is something I haven't had a chance to feature. And this fan happened to have it in a personal collection and actually decided to donate it to the show. So, for the first time, hence why this is being released so far after the original Revenge of the Sith coverage, I want to show you what did exist in 2005, and that is a European market release rated by the British Board of Film Classification, the BBFC, VHS copy of Revenge of the Sith. Again, yes, they absolutely did exist. Not in the US market, and in this case, not in a format you could watch in the US, because again, US uses NTSC, it's PAL in Europe, so this is essentially an item for a collector, not necessarily something to try to play in the United States. Now, I do like the fact, this is a clamshell case. I kind of prefer clamshell cases for VHS because they're easier to maintain as we go, as long as they're nice ones. This is a nice, even edge one, as opposed to that weird, rounded edge one for the Phantom Menace. It's got front art and back material pretty much like you would have seen on the DVD release, minus of course mentions of special features that aren't on here. Notice it's got a little notification there saying it is not for rental. And if you look down here, easiest way to spot that this is a European release is you have a different film rating system there. Now in the US, Revenge of the Sith was PG-13. We go G, PG, PG-13, R, NC-17, or unrated, and then you got like X-rated stuff that's not really part of that classification system that pornographers just needed a label to stick on things. If you go to Europe and start looking at the British classification system, you have U, which is universal, it's kind of like G. PG, which is the equivalent of the American PG. There's 12A, 12, and 15 as different gradations for teenagers. Then 18, which is kind of like the R cutoff at 17 for the US, and then an R18, which is restricted only to 18. It's interesting. It's a different classification. Of course, all these classifications are very arbitrary. In the United States, you can have a film that has no explicit violence, no explicit nudity, but if they drop the F word several times, all of a sudden it's automatically an R, even if everything else is like a freaking Disney film. They're all very arbitrary systems, but it's interesting to see. It's very easy to spot that if you're looking for one of these and you're saying, well, is it a US release or not? Well, look for the rating, right? Rated 12. Okay. On the inside, we have the actual film, the actual VHS, in similar label there, not for rental. No label on this side of it at all. Just a regular clamshell case here. No inserts or anything. And I wanted to provide to you a little bit of the message that was sent with this. This was provided by a viewer of the show named Ricky Rae that sent this all the way from Scotland to be able to make this part of the library, my collection, and the show here for those who've been clamoring for it for a while. Hey, even that troll can now say, see, there it is, it exists, as if I'd somehow denied it before. But Ricky said, among other things, been trying to describe this, said, as far as I can remember, there was no booklet, only the tape wrapped in cellophane. That is the tape with this case there wrapped in cellophane. I've since seen pictures of other ones that were still sealed, and this seems to confirm this. It was a general release at the time and wasn't retailer specific. I think you had to look really hard for it or order it specially. That note, by the way, because this is kind of a big deal to me to have someone kind of reach out to the show in this way, is actually going to spend its time in my collection folded inside the case here for Revenge of the Sith. So for those of you who were thinking, well, wait a second, that's weird, but didn't different media become popular or lose popularity in different regions at different times? Yes. This is a perfect example of that. In the US, VHS was pretty much gone the way of the dodo by 2005, so we didn't get a VHS release of Episode 3. In Europe, there was one, particularly coming out here through the rating system with the UK and all. And that's sort of similar to how, as we looked at the Laserdiscs, in Japan, Laserdiscs were much bigger initially than in the US, so they got a widescreen edition of, say, A New Hope earlier than we did. It's not a one-size-fits-all thing around the world when it comes to media and media types. It's simply a question of what's popular in that market and what's going to sell. In the US, VHS wouldn't necessarily have sold as well for Episode 3, so we lost out on having that complete VHS set of the prequels, or the original Lucas version of Star Wars. Whereas, if you were overseas, you did have a chance to pull that off. So again, my heartfelt thanks to Ricky for sending that copy to add to the collection here. I hope you all have enjoyed this look at an oddball foreign release that finally fills a hole in looking at how Star Wars developed from a home video media standpoint. And with that, we'll wrap up this episode. Thank you for watching, thank you Ricky for donating, and may the Force be with the home video viewers, here or abroad.